First and foremost, thank you so much for joining us. The intention of Watch Media is to give young people sustainable, actionable information they can use to improve the world. And talking to you seems appropriate because with Diversity Plus, Diversity Global, and Diversity Canada magazines, you do that as editor-in-chief, but for a corporate audience. So in over 20 years of publication, how do you think the diversity magazines have helped broaden people's perspective in terms of diversity and inclusion?
Well, let me first of all by saying thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to see young people really taking the baton and running with it, because we need that energy. Diversity Plus is primarily what we call Supply Diversity magazine. It's the business side of diversity. What happened in the late 60s after the civil rights movement, there was this push to bring economic parity to blacks and minorities. And so President Nixon, he initiated this whole minority business development initiative to give blacks, Hispanics, and others an opportunity at doing business, not only with corporate America, but with the government. And so what Diversity Plus does is basically sort of provide cutting edge information to help both corporations and suppliers better understand how to do business with each other, but also how to optimize that relationship. So we cover a lot of things like benchmarking, best practices, sustainability, innovation, technology, a lot of the things that drive the relationship between suppliers and corporations. And that is done really well. We're actually, I don't want to try to pat myself on the back, but we're kind of the benchmark in supply diversity for that Diversity Plus magazine. And so we are in the US, the European Union, and 7 other countries. Our print magazine is primarily in the US, and our digital is in the other countries. And so we've done a lot to really help suppliers understand the supply chain, how to build better relationships. We help companies understand the meaning of sourcing and purchasing in terms as it relates to suppliers and how to bring innovation to them. So there's a lot of things we kind of contribute in a way that really helps both sides. Not that they don't know a lot of these things, but we have to kind of remind them that it's important to really help your best suppliers or your best minority suppliers how to be more innovative, but also how to be sustainable. And so that's key. Our Diversity Global magazine is primarily all D&I, diversity and inclusion. So basically anything that revolves around, talent management, recruiting, onboarding, leadership, all the stuff that drives growth and development for employees, within the organization. And we are primarily what we call a C-suite magazine, because if you've had a chance to look at our magazine, it's really cutting edge content. We've got top-notch writers. I went to some really great schools. A lot of my writers come out of great schools. And so we do a lot to make sure that we capture what's driving D&I, as some companies call it now, I&D, inclusion and diversity, to really make this experience better. And so we have seen a lot over the years in terms of the changes. And I think one of the things you're seeing now, with all the protests and the movement, is that some things have gotten slacked off. Some companies have pulled back, haven't done the things that they said they were going to do. But for the most part, I think having young people in that mix and really understanding together across all the different social groups as well as ethnic groups better come together and push, I think we could make a big difference.
And in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement and changes especially happening now, how can companies, when they're making statements of diversity and inclusion, how can they hold themselves accountable long-term beyond the trend that's happening?
Well, I think what's more important is for us to have standards, and those standards could either be set by government or by the community. A lot of times people say, well, government shouldn't be involved in this, but government really has to get involved. They have to really put the pressure on corporations to do the right thing. This is not about doing something that's socially good. We've gone past that. We have a lot of talent in our communities that's not being optimized. And a lot of it is racism, right? But you can't say it's all racism, but a lot of it is racism. So the thing is, how do we make sure companies are doing what they need to do to really harness the talent we have in this great country? And I always say building standards, making sure, because what gets measured gets done, right? So if we are putting their feet to the fire and saying, okay, here is what you should be doing in terms of D&I. Do you have a talent pipeline? Are you bringing in people to learn about your business? You don't necessarily have to hire them, but have like an internship program, not just 1 or 2 people, but have a pipeline that they're constantly coming in every year. and they're rotating and they're learning about the organization, learning about the businesses, so that at some point they can decide if they, if they want to either stay in that industry or do something else. On the supplier side, you want corporations to invest in their suppliers. I've seen over the years, and we've been covering diversity for over 25 years, they say that we have all these great numbers, we're spending billions, but when you break down the numbers, you actually don't see a lot of spend with Blacks and Hispanics, right? So we have all these other diverse groups, which of course are necessary, but we have to be fair to everyone. And so we have to invest in nurturing the talent, growing them, and ensuring that they're sustainable. Because at the end of the day, if those businesses don't come back to the community and build what we call economic empowerment, then we all lose, right? So only we can really bring that kind of economic empowerment to our own communities. We support each other, we help each other to grow. It's good for everybody.
And in terms of young people making changes within those companies, often like young people are, when they start in the business world or whatever company that they're starting at, they're lower on the totem pole. They don't have as much power and influence yet. So what would you say to them in order to influence diversity, inclusion, and change within their companies?
Well, I think what's unique in this space and time that we're in is that you see young people of all stripes and colors congregating, doing things together, hanging out. And that is really important, because when I was in corporate America, we were all in pockets. There's Blacks here, there's whites here, there's Hispanics here. And that's not good for an organization. You hear companies, talking about their ERGs. Well, I think we're way past ERGs. People understand each other, not just by race, but across culture, skill sets, across all the different things. How can we now, motivate and energize the young people to do the things they need to do? So I say young people need to really, first of all, share among each other about their cultures, share about their experiences, share about their background. They're working together as teams, and as they grow through the leadership, pipeline, they'll be able to bring those things with them. And I think at the end of the day, that's what's going to make the key difference. But it has to start at the top. There has to be a process of really bringing young people together and giving them a voice at the table, because they're the next generation.
And going along that same line, when young people often don't see that change, or they don't see the leadership showing the values that they want, they may choose to go start their own companies or their own businesses. So what kind of traits do you see in young people that makes them successful in doing so?
Well, I think first and foremost, we need all young people should really focus on education. Get a really good education, because without an educational foundation, you really can't do as much as you can, if compared to if you have it. The other thing is wealth building. How do you save and grow and build wealth? Because with economic power comes, you can pretty much do anything you want to do. And I think for the most part, young people have to be able to use all the tools at their disposal to really leverage the space they're in. So if you're working for corporate America, you want to be able to, of course, try to be the best that you can in whatever area you're in. But at the same time, you want to be a champion. We use the word champion, but what we're saying is help others understand you and help them basically understand each other, right? And then I think if we have empathy for each other and we try to understand, we can do much more with each other. So I think at the end of the day, young people are going to see things differently than when we were growing up, but they'll be in a much better position to make changes in unique ways that we haven't had a chance.
And you bring up
and then of course with social media, they can do so much more. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. You bring up an interesting point with education, and a lot of students, not a lot of students, a small percentage of students are opting not to go to college, but to educate themselves in other ways outside of a university setting. Are there other ways that you think that students can educate themselves in order to be successful outside of the traditional path of university?
Absolutely. I think we have to think outside the box. We grew up thinking you have to go to college to get an education, but you can get so much good stuff online, right? There's so many virtual learning tools that you can pick up a lot of things, and you basically have to try to find what fits for you. Some people like a school setting, some like studying alone, but at the end of the day, knowledge is power. So if you can spend that time and learn everything you need to know about what you want to do, it gives you more power, more confidence, give you more of the ability to get things done. So I would not say you have to be in a college or university setting to get an education. Just go online. There's, there's Apple University. There's just a whole bunch of, not just universities, but tools, virtual tools where you can, on YouTube and other places, you can learn so much about many different areas. And as you grow, your thinking changes. And then at some point you may say, you know what, maybe I need a school setting. Let me go do my master's at the university, so you will adapt and you will decide what works for you. But education is key. Knowledge is power.
And looking back, especially at your time at university, what advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
Well, I would say keep trying, don't give up. Because I remember I didn't have a lot of role models. I remember when I was when I joined the National Association of Black Accountants. That was in my second year of college, right? And I was a finance major. And there was only a few of us, but we didn't really have role models. And when we went to the first national conference, there was like, I don't know, maybe 50 people, right? And now you can't even get in because it's so packed, right? So what we have to do is really build role models, whether it's ourselves or through others. And that's one of the things we enjoy doing with the magazine, because we look for community difference makers, people who are making a difference in their communities in unique ways. And we feature them, we highlight the things they're doing to make a difference so they could become role models for others. So one of the things I would say to myself, my 20-year-old self is, you know what, just keep pushing, which I did actually back then, because, I didn't have parents to help me. I had to help myself because my parents had died when I was a kid. So I was very blessed and thankful to be around good people. And I really studied hard and didn't always work out, but I'm thankful for where I am.
And you said in your magazine, you look for people who are making change within their communities. What are you most proud of in terms of influencing change through your magazines?
Well, if I look back, 20 plus years, what we've done, we have seen so many change. I mean, before everything was revolving around print, right? So every time we wanted to articulate something successful in the community, we would pretty much have to, write the article, go through all the layout stuff for the print. Now you can take it through so many different platforms. I mean, we have, in addition to print, we have digital, we have a weekly newsletter, we have podcasts, we have the website, we have social media, primarily LinkedIn and Twitter. And so there's so many different ways we can connect globally. And the unique thing about, even for diversity, it's different in every place. So diversity in the US is different than diversity in Canada, in the UK, in other parts of Europe. Every place in Europe, diversity means something else. Sometimes diversity could mean, experience, background, skill sets. When we think of diversity in the US, primarily we think around race, which is of course an important tool. But we're so diverse in many other ways, and being able to harness that talent and being able to bring it all together for the benefit of not only us, the US, the world, but for everything around us, I think is the difference maker right there.
Absolutely. And looking forward, who are some of the young leaders that you're keeping your eye on?
Well, I like what I'm seeing with I like what, Beyonce is standing up. I see, of course, Colin Kaepernick, I see LeBron James. I mean, I see a lot more young people now they've been emboldened by what's happening to speak out and to say, it's time for change. We need to see real change. We don't need a lot of talk. But I think the real leaders are going to come out of this crisis we're in. We have never experienced this kind of a situation before with this pandemic, of course, with racial inequality, economic inequality. There is so much going on at the same time. And there's young people learning and coming through this process right now who's going to be our leaders of tomorrow. And they're the ones going to say, you know what? We are going to change, and we're going to change now, because they're not going to wait for the next generation or for others to make the change. They're going to make it because they've lived through it. I mean, 100 years ago, of course, when we had the pandemic, we were coming out of the First World War, of course. And so we didn't have the kind of tools we have now to see what was happening globally. But I think hopefully what we're going through now will make this world a better place. It's very sad to see what's happening to so many people, but I believe that God, if you're religious, or nature, if you're into nature, has a way of rebalancing itself, right? And I have a feeling that's what we're seeing now. And I believe in 15, 20 years from now, we'll have a much better America and a much better world.
To close out, how can young people best combine their passion while also contributing something valuable that positively impacts society?
Well, again, it's learning. Just keep learning and have, you need to be around positive people. That is so important. You're around people who are always negative without you even knowing. You fall into, it's like falling into a black hole. It's so hard to get out of that mindset when all you hear is negativity, or all you hear is people complaining about, stuff going on around them. You want to be around positive, like-minded people who are progressive, who are, looking to build success, who are looking to grow, because that's what subconsciously, that's what builds you, right? And you do things without even knowing about it. So surround yourself with good people, read good things, say good things, avoid, being judgmental, just, whether you rationalize or, whether you're spiritual, find a way, as we say, to harmonize with nature. I'm a very nature kind of person. Harmonize with nature and the things around you, and just work for the betterment of this beautiful planet that we live in. I mean, people will say, well, what's the big deal? Climate change, all that stuff. But all we have is a little rock that we call Earth. And if we don't take care of it, how much longer can humanity exist? So at the end of the day, we're all God's children. We all want the best for our families. And all we have to do is say, please, give me a chance. Let's give others a chance as well. And of course, I think also young people should not be afraid to fail. You should not, take, especially young, take risks, because without failure, you can't appreciate success. So that's my closing thought there.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us, Paul.
Anytime. And thank you for all the work you're doing to make a difference for others, and good luck and best wishes.